there's a notion that communication is additive. We contribute to a conversation. We add our voice to a petition. We want to be heard. And there are a lot of voices. Some are demanding, and some are quiet. Some voices are playful and friendly. Some voices are strident and angry. Some voices challenge us, some comfort us, some just simply make a lot of noise. But even the ones that seem to be true don't always lead to the truth. So out of this whole realm of voices, which voice is God's? We call this Good Shepherd Sunday, but another name for it should be Good Sheep Sunday, because in addition to the love and compassion that's expressed by God, we also hear that good sheep listen for Jesus' voice. And don't just listen for it, but then we also respond. But in the midst of all those voices, in the constant clamor of our society, how do we recognize which voice belongs to the Good Shepherd? This question has intrigued me for a number of years, and especially recently as so many voices are heard in society. And I came across an article by Father Ron Rolheiser that he wrote several years ago that explored this very topic, that tried to discern how we can tell if we're listening to the voice of God. And his conclusion in this article is this is not an easy task. Now that shouldn't come as a surprise. We live in a world where sometimes it's hard to discern God's authentic voice in everything that we hear claimed. So many things claim to be authentically religious and aren't. So many unscrupulous people try to twist and use God's word for power or for wealth. So out of all of that, what is God's word? And that's simply what Father Ron Rolheiser was exploring. How do we as good sheep discern the true voice of the Good Shepherd? And here's what he came up with. Discernment of the voice of the Good Shepherd requires us to trust our gut, our moral sense of right and wrong, the internal forum of our conscience. And in order to do that, he put together some principles. And here they are. The voice of God is recognized in both whispers and soft tones, and in thunder and storm. The voice of God is recognized whenever one sees life, joy, health, and humor. And it's also seen in dying, suffering, poverty, and a beaten down spirit. The voice of God is recognized in what calls us to something higher, what sets us apart, what invites us to holiness. And it's also recognized in the call to humility, submergence into humanity, in that which refuses to denigrate all of what makes us human. The voice of God is recognized in what appears in our lives as foreign, as other, in the voice of the stranger, even as it is recognized in the voice of the familiar that beckons us home. The voice of God is the one that most challenges us, the one that most stretches us, even at the same time when it is the one that ultimately soothes us. Do you see the consistency in all these principles that he came up with? Mostly it seems that the voice of God is found in paradox. It's found in balance. It's found in understanding the range of humanity. Again, that shouldn't surprise us. There are times in all of our lives when we've experienced the transcendent God, the God who's out there, the one who is bigger than our imagination, one that does things far beyond our comprehension. And then there are times when we've experienced the immanent God, the God that's in here, the God that's part of every breath we take. I think both of those extremes are what defines us as good sheep and what helps us to listen to the authentic voice of God. The challenge of discerning God's voice means that we can't be satisfied with the simple answer. We can't be swayed by the most insistent, the loudest, or even the voice that claims to be the most religious. And the one that I think is most dangerous sometimes is the voice that agrees with ours. Sometimes we remake God in our own image in the echo chamber where we surround ourselves with voices that sound like ours. And that's the opposite of what the Good Shepherd says. The Good Shepherd says that the sheep follow the shepherd, that we are made in God's image. And if we're good sheep, we have to discern. And good discernment has a few characteristics. The first is that Jesus' sheep hear his voice. Now that implies that they know that voice, which implies familiarity and attentiveness. Unlike those in the gospel who could not discern the divine fingerprints at work in Jesus, his sheep have learned to recognize his work. They've learned to recognize Jesus in all things that are good. Secondly, Jesus' sheep knows that he calls to them, and in that call they hear hope and encouragement. Unlike those who try to make themselves greater by tearing down those around them, by simply being grumpy, we know that God's sheep have learned that Jesus always tries to fill us with hope, to encourage us to be our very best selves. That's what we're asked to do. And finally, Jesus' sheep are watchful, yearning to hear his voice at any moment, open to the possibilities that voice might bring. Unlike those who believe that they are alone, that they are fighting through this life solely on their own merits, Jesus' sheep know that every moment, in everything we do, we're surrounded by his love. Against the background of so many competing voices, so much noise, and so many negative messages, we have to be good sheep. And in order to be good sheep, we have to be careful to listen and to discern that true voice, the voice that always safely leads us, the one of the Good Shepherd.